Family and friends that are joining us via technology, it is my very sad duty to stand here with you, my friends, my family, to say goodbye to a trusted and dear friend, a protector, a husband, a brother, a father, a grandfather, an amazing officer of the law, Rick Vanderclock, of blessed memory. I'm going to begin our service today with the recitation of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God leads me beside the still waters, and God restores my spirit, for that is God's name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, because God is with me. God's rod and God's staff comfort me now and at all times. And even though you prepare a table in front of my enemies, I know that my head is anointed with oil, that goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of God forever. And let us together say the words, Amen. Every Wednesday morning during our prayer service at Temple Emanu-El, where Rick worked with T&M Security, we would circulate a tzedakah box. Now, tzedakah is the Hebrew word for charity. And a tzedakah box is a lot like a collection plate. And after the box would make its rounds amongst all of the worshipers, I would see out of the corner of my eye, Rick reaching into his pocket, pulling out his wallet, and putting some money inside of that box. The first time I caught him doing that, I looked at him almost quizzically, as if to say, what are you doing? You know, your job is to look after us. We're supposed to give the money. I didn't say those words, but the look said. And he said to me with this very satisfied smile on his face, charity is the same in all religions. Charity is the same in all religions. It is that ethic shared by Rick that brings this Jewish rabbi to eulogize this Protestant Christian. But this husband, this father, this grandfather, this brother, this police officer, and this valued and very trusted friend. Rick was one of 3 regular security people at our congregation, Temple Emanu-El. But to call Paul, Steve, and Rick security is unfair. That is to share their role, but not their persona. In their own way, Paul, Steve, and Rick each are part of our family. They are part of our community. They are appreciated, they are treasured, and they are adored by everyone who walks through the threshold of Temple Emanu-El. And that is why the news of Rick's death from this terrible disease has hit us all at the temple in such a very painful and profound way. It is like we witnessed a strong oak tree that was rooted and sturdy just tumble to the ground. All from this unpredictable and vicious wind that seemingly came from nowhere. And now all of us are staring at this strong, healthy, strapping man who stood like that trusty oak. And to see it has fallen has not only left us in shock, it has given us unspeakable sadness and grief, and it has left us all in disbelief. But to focus on how Rick died, or how upset we are that he was taken from us, is an absolute disservice to the 71 years that he lived in this world. He was born and raised in Midland Park, New Jersey, and Rick joined the New Jersey State Police, following the footsteps of his father, who was the chief of police of Midland Park. Rick took to law enforcement like a fish takes to water. When Rick was in the police academy, as his brother Bobby pointed out, he was the first recruit ever to score a perfect score of 300 on his shooting test. For 50 years, the police academy had been around, and no one ever had scored perfectly until Rick Vanderclock achieved that amazing feat. Soon after joining the state police, Rick would make the biggest and the wisest choice of his life. He would marry his love, Maureen. Set up by mutual friends together, they were a perfect team. She worked tirelessly at home, and he worked tirelessly on the beat. 1 year after marriage, they bought a home in Wayne, and they planted roots in that town. Maureen and Rick brought 2 amazing children into this world. Rick Jr., affectionately known as Ricky, and David. They had a fairy tale American life in so many beautiful ways. 29 years flew by, and the kids grew up going to school, playing local sports, rooting with their dad for the New York Football Giants, and painfully lamenting the New York Mets, except in 1986. All of this happened while Rick was busy protecting and serving. In his job, he drove United States First Ladies. He shook hands with presidents. He escorted dignitaries, not to mention the usual work of catching the bad guys and keeping us all safe. By the time Rick retired, he had earned the rank of Detective Sergeant First Class. Have you ever heard that phrase, you can take the boy out of Midland Park, but not the Midland Park out of the boy? Well, the very same could be said of Rick when it came to retiring from the force. He couldn't get the law enforcement out of his blood. He would back up his kids and pull alongside them while they were working a midnight shift. He said he would back them up whenever they had a trouble or a case. He enlisted with T&M security, thank God, which allowed our paths to cross. He just couldn't shake his connection to protecting and to serving. His kids would tell me that it was common. They would work a midnight shift, and all of a sudden this car would pull alongside them, and it was their dad, checking in on them, backing them up, just seeing how they were, and shooting the breeze. Sometimes, in the middle of a parking lot at 1 o'clock in the morning, Rick and David would have the most meaningful, the most serious, and the most heartfelt conversations with someone they were blessed not only to call their father, but each of them who called Rick their very best friend. What made him their best friend was that they could share anything with their father and never for a single moment feel like they were judged. That's what makes this so painful. Maureen, Rick, and David, you lost a husband and a father, and you lost your very best friend. Rick would always tell you, I'm your father first, but I'm also your friend. Don't ever forget that. And if you knew Rick, you knew he was your friend. He was your friend because whenever a project was happening around the house, he was there. Whether you were his child, you were his neighbor, you were a colleague 30 years ago and he hasn't seen you since. All you needed was a phone call, and he was there. He would be physically present, and he would roll up his sleeves and give it his all to show you that you could always count on him. In Yiddish, we would call Rick a kibitzer. Now that's an affectionate term for someone who can chat it up with just about anyone. And boy, could he ever. Every day Rick was on the job, he would come into my office and tell me a story. He would show me a picture, and oh, how I'm going to miss that. But as good as he could share, he was even better at listening. And he didn't just hear you. He really listened to you. And he never, ever casted judgment upon you for anything you might tell him. And like a Brinks truck, if you told him a secret or you confided in him, it was safe with him. And he was as reliable as a Swiss clock. It was that very same ethic of dependability, of reliability, of honesty and goodness that ensured that every single dance recital for Ava and Julia and every game for Jason and Jake, that Poppy was in the stands, that he was cheering and applauding for you. And he loved those events so much. I hope you four know how incredibly proud your Poppy was and always will be of each of you. I have been told so many stories about all of you, individually and collectively, that I feel like we are already family, that it's just the last piece of the puzzle coming together today. But I know about ATV accidents. I know about football games that wanted to be played and couldn't be played. I know about recitals. I know about proms and dances, everything you can imagine. It makes me feel great being like family with all of you, like invincible to getting future tickets, and we can talk about that later. When the news of Rick's passing broke in our house, my son, Elias, who's 12 years old, was sitting next to me, and he heard on the phone exactly what had transpired, and he started crying uncontrollably. And he said to me in this muffled voice, Rick wasn't security, he was part of our family. That's how we felt. That's how all the clergy felt. That's how our congregation felt. And that's how I feel about all of you. That's how we all felt about him. And there are a few reasons why, and I hope you indulge me for just a couple of minutes to tell a couple of those reasons. A year and a half ago, there was a horrible shooting in Pittsburgh at a synagogue, the Tree of Life Synagogue. And it was a scary day for Jewish people everywhere. I came home from the synagogue that Saturday morning and sat glued to the television set in my family room. And there was an unusual knock on my door. Usually there are no knocks on my door on Saturday afternoon. I looked through the peephole, and there was Rick and his partner, Paul, security at our temple, and they asked to come in. Of course, they came in. I poured coffee. We sat in my family room. And Rick drove all this way, which is not a quick drive from Closter to here, just to sit in my family room and tell me two things. One, that under their watch, nothing was going to happen to us or to our temple, and that we can sleep soundly. So here we were at a moment of fright and worry for all of the Jewish community. And his first response was to come and to give us a real hug and a communal virtual hug to say, we're going to protect you. We will look after you.
You see?
A few years ago, I was dealing with someone who was not mentally fit and who was stalking me. It was a scary time. Every day that was going on, Rick would walk me to my car at night. Now, walking to my car was all of 30 feet. But for months at a time, he just felt better walking in my car. He made it like he was telling me about some sports event or like he wanted to say something that was happening with the kids. But I knew why he continued to walk me to my car until that person was caught and locked up. That's the kind of person he was. And every single day, Rick was on duty at the temple. He started his day by driving by our house. And he finished his day by driving by our house. Occasionally I would see him and he'd give me a wave. Most times I didn't. And he said to me, I drive by your house every day because nothing's going to happen to you on my watch. 2 years ago, I leased a new car. And I pulled into the driveway and he says, wow, that car is beautiful, Rabbi. Drive it in good health. I said, thank you. The next day I come out to my car and right on the windshield there's a beautiful sticker. It says New Jersey State Trooper. I said, where'd that come from? He says, no one's going to give you a ticket. Put that on your windshield, Rabbi. But don't drive over the speed limit. I said, okay. About 9 months later, some pebble hit my windshield and it cracked. And I had to take it to the dealer to get fixed. It got fixed and they had to replace it with a brand new windshield. So I told this to Rick just in shooting the breeze because we could always talk about nothing and feel like we connected. 24 hours later, I come out to my new windshield. There's another state trooper sticker. I said, where did that come from? Because I have no idea what you're even talking about. I used to feel like I was the luckiest guy in the world to have this guy standing behind my shoulder. But he acted that way for anyone who was blessed to know him. We had a member of our team who got into her very first traffic accident ever, and it happened about 2.5 miles away from the temple. She was very distraught. What did Rick do? He threw us in his truck and we drove over to the accident. He talked her through how to fill out the report, how to talk to the police, what to do with the insurance, and calmed her down. He just knew instinctively, like a father and like a veteran, how to handle these situations. And he did it with empathy and with love and with compassion. But I think the most beautiful image I have in my mind's eye of Rick is on Saturday morning when I would stand at my pulpit and I could see to the back of the congregation, they would all be looking at me. And we have many elderly people who come to our congregation on Saturday, and it's their custom to wear a prayer shawl. We call it a talit. And sometimes the elderly people are not as nimble and they can't put the talis on. And I would see Rick reach and grab the prayer shawl, and put it on their shoulders, and tap them as if to say, thank you for being here. And I'm on your shoulders too. It was this simple, loving gesture that embodied the goodness, the kindness, the genteelness that was this beautiful giant of a man. Now, if I received one email, I received at least 100 emails of people with senior parents or others in our community that Rick helped, that he loved, and that he looked after regularly. People in our congregation and people all over the world shared a story similar to the ones that I shared about how Rick touched them, how Rick was present for them, how Rick cared for them. He was and will always be remembered as a unique, a loving, and a good soul. If I were to encapsulate Rick in a word, the word that comes to the front of my mind is proud. He stood tall and he stood proud. Not arrogant in any way, just proud. In order, he was proud to be known as Maureen's husband. He was proud to be Rick and David's father and the father-in-law of Joanne and Marissa. And he was proud to be the papi of Julie, Jason, Ava, and Jake. And he was so proud to protect the public. And he was also resolute, and he was focused. Were he able to talk to us today, he would be touched and honored by the literal hundreds of police cars from police groups throughout the state of New Jersey that are in formation outside to pay him respects. If he were able to talk to us today and we could see his handsome face, he would be teary-eyed saying goodbye to his love, Maureen. And he would say in a very clear, no-nonsense voice to you, Rick, and to you, David, to you, Joanne, and to you, Marissa, to you, Julia, and Jason, Ava, and Jake, that your responsibility now is to honor his memory. And the best way to do that is to provide what we would have to do in the way that he would do it. First, to always be present for each other. And to always look after your Grammy every day with love, with affection, and with patience. For Rick and for David, he would tell you to continue to be best friends and to always help each other out with a hand. He would tell you at the end of any shift to drive by and pull up next to one another, check in with each other, and to always back each other up, both literally and figuratively. Julia and Jason, Ava and Jake, you have to always cheer each other on in spirit and in person. You have to make sure you laugh, that you share silly stories, that you share fun stories, and that you share pride in your family and your heritage and who each other are and your achievements. And most importantly for all of you, to always lend an ear that will hear and listen. Rick would tell us all, especially the younger people, to love your work. That if you don't, you shouldn't be doing it. But you should also love humanity and make the world a better place anywhere and everywhere you can. Rick would tell us to be physically present for people, whether it's after a car wreck, a scare, or a happy occasion. Just being there was something Rick did, and it always made people feel better. And doing these things will not only honor his memory, it will perpetuate his memory and allow us to feel his presence today and tomorrow. The sad irony of this day is a man that protected countless citizens was robbed from his family and friends and community. The injustice is cruel. But just as an officer and being someone who protected and served could never leave Rick's bloodstream, even after he retired, the impulse to look after your family and your community, Rick, won't end in this world. We know that you're going to look after all of us from heaven. You will always protect Maureen, Rick and Joanne, Julia and Jason, David and Marissa, and Ava and Jake, your brother Bobby and twin sister Joy, your friends and your adopted family at Temple Emanu-El. But we promise, Rick, that we're going to split the shift with you and look after these beautiful and special souls who were so lucky and privileged to have you as their husband, their brother, their father, and Poppy. We only pray that you will keep looking after us too. Let us feel your presence at the Giants game. Let us know you're there when the Mets win. Let us feel you when the bad guys get caught, when our world is safe, and the sun is shining down on that strong oak tree that gives us shade, life, and dependability. Rick, my dear friend, may you forever rest in peace. May you forever protect us from above. We love and miss you today, and we will love and miss you forever. Amen. At this time, I'd like to ask the family to rise. There will be a cortege of the casket be brought outside, where Amazing Grace will be played by bagpipes and taps will be offered in memory of Rick Vanderclock, Detective Sergeant First Class. For those that are joining us by Zoom, we ask that you please stay tuned in for that cortege.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to thank Rabbi Dave for the beautiful service here today and his words of encouragement. I'm going to move the kneel right of the way, and you can say your final goodbyes to Rick, and then if you just wait by the glass doors, and then Rick gets you out.
You know, I think it's
We have a contingent outside. You can watch them go to the back of her without the hurry. Okay. First and last.
Rabbi, thank you.
Thank
It was
you.
beautiful.
I'll see you outside.
Okay.
Please mute your device.
Pizza, attend!